Now, we try to keep politics out of the courtroom. You'll agree with that, like grand juries and stuff like that. You don't want the politics of the day bleeding into the grand jury. That's why we have procedures, right? And what you're looking at right here is this is only in reference to police officers that you would put a judge in a grand jury room, okay? Why are we treating police officers any differently than anyone else where a case would be in front of the grand jury? So if the case was that you're going to put a judge in a grand jury proceeding in an incident involving police officers, right, and you think that's a great solution, why wouldn't you have a judge in every grand jury proceeding?
I think it's a very good question, and it's an important question. Let me try to answer it. What makes these cases unique is that, and different from other cases, we believe, is that when police officers are the subject of the investigation, the grand jury investigation, there is a perception, and again, I don't know that this is real or perceived, but there's no question, and there could really be no disagreement that some members of the community view that as a conflict of interest when a district attorney is investigating criminal charges against a police officer arising out of the police officer's official duties. And why is that? It's because because district attorneys, as they must, work so closely with police officers, rely on them as witnesses in so many of their cases. There's such a close relationship, as there should be, between a district attorney's office and the police department and their jurisdiction, that there's a perception that they cannot be, that prosecutors cannot be objective in those cases and cannot aggressively and robustly present those cases to the grand jury as prosecutors are able to do in other cases.
Okay, I would have to differ with you on that because I was a police officer when Liz Holtzman was a DA. And trust me, there was no relationship there, okay, as far as that's concerned. But what we're doing is we're attempting to politicize this. Now, you went back to the history of the grand jury proceedings, and what you know, and I made this argument with the chief judge here, and it looks like we're bringing police officers, like the grand jury process has evolved since the 12th century, and we're trying to bring it, in the case of a police officer, back to the 12th century. Now, there was a time, was there not, when judges were actually in the grand jury proceedings? Colonial times.
Never in New York that I'm aware of, in our history. Not that I'm aware of. I could be wrong about that.
In colonial times, when it was brought here, they actually had judges, but they felt that it was too politicized. It was too politicized where the king had authority over them, right? And they kicked the judges out of the grand jury proceedings. So why are we trying to bring our criminal justice system back to the 12th century in England?
Well, let me just add that, you know, no, as far as I know, the grand jury originated in England in, I think it was the 12th or maybe the 11th century. There hasn't been a grand jury in England in years and years and years. There's no grand jury anymore in England. And in fact, in this country, in roughly half the states, there's no grand jury, at least used for run-of-the-mill street crime cases. Some states still have the grand jury for long-term investigations. But most states in this country do not use a grand jury routinely to charge defendants. So what they have is typically they'll have a preliminary hearing, which is a public proceeding. It's an adversarial proceeding. The target, the defendant, is represented by counsel. So this is not, I'd have to agree, this is not in any way an effort to politicize the grand jury process. It's completely the opposite. It's to take politics out of it and give the perception of fairness to the grand jury process. And look, when you say that you would disagree, and based on your experience as a police officer, this was not your experience, and I respect that, and I couldn't possibly disagree with that, because that was your experience. But there's no question that many, many people would disagree with you. And I don't know that they're right or wrong, but there is, without a doubt, a perception, and an increasingly held perception, that prosecutors cannot be objective in these cases, in this narrow category of cases. And again, is that an accurate perception? It may not be, but perceptions in the justice system are very important. And, you know, we're all about fairness and perception of fairness. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do everything we can to make the process as fair as it possibly can be, and to ensure that all people perceive the process as a fair one. And that's what the Chief Judge is trying to do in this proposal, is to address the perceptions held by many people, maybe not you or maybe not me, but many people who perceive this as a process that's not fair. By putting a neutral judicial officer in the grand jury proceeding, we believe that will give it more of a veneer of fairness, and will address concerns that many people have raised about this process.
Okay, my last one, because I can't monopolize. I don't see how the court or the chief judge can sit here and say this is he's not playing politics right now, when you're treating one group of people, a small group of people, because of the politics of the day, differently than you're treating everyone else. So if you're going to put judges in the grand jury for just police officers, you've got to put it in there for everyone. You can't, this is a constitutional right that you're playing with, all right? And basically you're treating one group of people differently than you're treating everybody else. So what's good for one is good for everyone. So I can't see how you can't say this is politics, okay, when you're turning around and you're only putting judges in there for things related to police officers.
Thank you, Mr. Graf.